The afternoon sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows of Riverside Bistro, casting golden rectangles across marble floors that gleam like mirrors. The gentle clink of silverware against bone china mingles with hushed conversations and soft jazz piano, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance that speaks of old money and newer pretensions. But beneath this polished surface, something darker stirs. Tyler Morrison adjusts his black tie and smooths his perfectly pressed white shirt as he glides between tables, his smile bright and welcoming for some, noticeably cooler for others. His movements are practiced, theatrical even, as if he's performing for an invisible audience that judges him not just on his service, but on his ability to maintain certain standards. The restaurant operates like a well-oiled machine during Friday lunch rush, but machines can be programmed with flaws. And sometimes, those flaws reveal themselves in the most unexpected moments, when the wrong people walk through doors that were never meant to welcome everyone equally. James Williams pushes through the heavy glass doors with his 16-year-old niece Amelia at his side, both dressed casually in jeans and polo shirts that speak of comfort rather than status. The hostess station sits empty, abandoned in the lunch rush chaos, so they wait patiently near the entrance. James's eyes move methodically across the dining room, taking in details that most customers would never notice. The spacing between tables, the cleanliness of the water glasses, the way servers interact with different customers. "Uncle James, how do you know so much about restaurants?" Amelia asks, watching him examine the placement of the silverware on a nearby table. "Just observant, sweetheart," he replies, his voice carrying a warmth that doesn't quite reach his eyes as they continue scanning the room. "You learn to notice things when you care about quality." Tyler emerges from the kitchen, carrying a tray of appetizers to a table of well-dressed white diners. His demeanor radiates professional charm as he explains the chef's special preparation, his voice animated and gushing. The customers laugh at his small jokes, clearly enchanted by his performance. He basks in their approval, standing just a little taller, his chest puffed with pride. But as he turns toward the entrance and spots James and Amelia, his expression shifts almost imperceptibly. The smile remains, but it becomes mechanical, practiced. His shoulders tense slightly, and his pace slows as he approaches them, as if he's walking through invisible molasses. "Good afternoon," Tyler says, his voice polite but noticeably cooler than moments before. "Do you have a reservation?" James extends his hand in greeting, a gesture that Tyler pretends not to see. "We were hoping for a table by the window, if possible. Just the two of us." Tyler's eyes dart toward the coveted window seating, where natural light bathes the tables in golden warmth, and diners can watch boats drift along the river. 3 of those tables sit empty, their white tablecloths pristine and waiting. But Tyler's mouth twists into what might charitably be called a smile. "I'm afraid those tables are reserved for our VIP guests," he says, the words dripping with implication. "Let me find you something more appropriate." He leads them past the bright, airy window section, past the elegant central dining area, where conversations flow like wine, all the way to a corner table wedged between the kitchen doors and the restroom entrance. The lighting here is harsh fluorescent rather than warm incandescent, and the constant traffic of servers and the occasional waft of industrial cleaning products creates an atmosphere more reminiscent of a cafeteria than a fine dining establishment. "This should work perfectly for you," Tyler announces, pulling out chairs with exaggerated ceremony that somehow feels more like mockery than service. James remains calm, helping Amelia into her seat before taking his own. He doesn't complain about the location, doesn't demand better treatment. Instead, he observes Tyler with the quiet intensity of someone who sees more than he says. "Could we get some water to start?" James asks politely. "Of course," Tyler replies, but makes no move to fulfill the request. Instead, he heads back toward his preferred section, where a new group of white diners has just been seated at one of those coveted window tables. 20 minutes pass. James and Amelia sit without menus, without water, watching Tyler lavish attention on other tables. He refills wine glasses that are barely touched, brings complimentary appetizers to favored customers, and engages in lengthy conversations about wine pairings and chef recommendations. Amelia shifts uncomfortably in her chair, her face beginning to flush. "Uncle James, I'm feeling a little weird. Could you ask for some water? I think I might be having an allergic reaction to something." James's protective instincts flare immediately. He stands and approaches Tyler, who is currently describing the merits of a particular vintage to a table of business executives. "Excuse me," James interrupts quietly. "My niece is having an allergic reaction. Could we please get some water immediately?" Tyler glances over with obvious annoyance at being interrupted. "Sir, I'm currently attending to these important guests. I'll be with you when I can." The word important hangs in the air like smoke, its implications clear to everyone within earshot. The business executives exchange uncomfortable glances, suddenly finding their wine glasses fascinating. James's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, but his voice remains level. "This is a medical situation. She needs water now. I said I'll be with you when I can," Tyler repeats, his voice rising slightly. "Please return to your table." Instead of arguing further, James walks to the service station himself, fills a glass with ice water, and returns to Amelia. His movements are calm and purposeful, but anyone watching closely might notice the way his hands move with practiced efficiency, the way he automatically checks the cleanliness of the glass, the way his eyes catalog every detail of the restaurant's operation, even in this moment of personal crisis. Tyler watches this interaction with growing irritation, his professional mask beginning to slip. In his mind, James has just committed an unforgivable sin. He's disrupted the natural order of things, stepped outside his designated role, shown initiative that challenges Tyler's authority. As James helps Amelia sip the water and monitors her breathing, Tyler makes a decision that will prove to be his undoing. He approaches their table with deliberate steps, his face set in lines of false authority. "Sir, I need to ask you not to help yourself to our supplies," he says loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear. "This is a health code violation, and frankly, it's not the kind of behavior we expect from our clientele." The surrounding conversations begin to quiet as diners tune into the drama unfolding in their midst. James looks up at Tyler with eyes that seem to see straight through him, but his voice remains steady. "My niece needed water for a medical emergency. Your staff wasn't responsive." "Our staff responds appropriately to appropriate guests," Tyler shoots back, the words escaping before he can stop them. The implication lands like a slap across the face of everyone within hearing distance. Several diners stop eating entirely, forks suspended halfway to their mouths. The racist subtext is no longer subtext. It's text, plain and clear for all to see. James stands slowly, his full height impressive in the confined space. For a moment, Tyler seems to realize he's crossed a line, but pride and prejudice push him forward rather than allowing him to retreat. "Perhaps," James says quietly, "you should reconsider your approach to customer service." Tyler's face flushes red as he processes what he perceives as a challenge to his authority. In his twisted worldview, James has not only stepped out of line, but has done so publicly, in front of the customers Tyler considers worthy of respect. The humiliation burns in his chest like acid, and he makes a choice that reveals the true depth of his character. "Don't lecture me about customer service," Tyler hisses, his voice low but carrying clearly in the sudden quiet of the surrounding tables. "I know how to treat customers who deserve to be here." James pulls out his phone and makes a call, his voice professional and measured. "Sarah, this is about the quality check I mentioned. I'm seeing some serious issues with service standards during the lunch shift. We need to discuss training protocols immediately." From across the dining room, Sarah Chen freezes mid-conversation with a customer. Her eyes dart toward James's table, and her face goes pale as she recognizes the man she hoped would never appear during one of Tyler's episodes. She's known about Tyler's behavior for months, the subtle ways he treats customers differently, the racist comments he makes in the break room, the complaints that somehow never make it up the chain of command, because Tyler has cultivated relationships with certain managers who share his worldview. Tyler notices Sarah's reaction but misinterprets it entirely. In his arrogance, he assumes she's concerned about him being bothered by difficult customers rather than recognizing the true nature of the situation unfolding before her eyes. Sarah doesn't need to get involved in this, Tyler says, stepping closer to James in what he imagines is an intimidating manner. I handle my own section, and I don't need some amateur telling me how to do my job. James's evaluation continues with professional detachment that somehow makes Tyler even angrier. Food presentation appears adequate, 7 out of 10. Ambiance is well maintained. Service attitude, however, requires immediate intervention and additional training. Are you some kind of restaurant critic or something? Tyler demands, his voice rising to a level that draws attention from tables throughout the dining room. Because I don't see any press credentials, and I don't see any reason why I should care about your opinion. A well-dressed elderly woman at a nearby table leans toward her companion. That gentleman does seem to know quite a bit about restaurant operations, she murmurs. The way he's evaluating everything. It's very professional. Tyler catches fragments of this conversation and his paranoia flares. The idea that James might actually have some kind of authority or expertise threatens the entire foundation of Tyler's prejudiced assumptions. Rather than reconsider his behavior, he doubles down with the desperate fury of someone whose worldview is crumbling. Amelia, feeling better now but still shaken, discreetly starts recording with her phone. She's heard her uncle's stories about discrimination in the workplace, but seeing it firsthand fills her with a mixture of anger and determination to document what's happening. James notices other customers beginning to pay attention to the confrontation. A young black couple at a corner table watches with obvious concern, while a Hispanic family near the window exchanges worried glances. The pattern is becoming clear. Tyler's behavior isn't an isolated incident, but part of a systematic approach to customer service that creates a hostile environment for anyone who doesn't fit his narrow definition of desirable clientele. You know what I think? Tyler says, his voice now carrying clearly across the dining room. I think you're trying to cause trouble. I think you came in here looking for a reason to complain, maybe trying to get a free meal or some kind of settlement. The accusation is so far beyond professional behavior that several customers gasp audibly. James remains calm, but there's steel in his voice when he responds. I think you should be very careful about your next words. But Tyler is beyond careful now. He's crossed the Rubicon of professional conduct and finds himself in territory where his worst impulses have free rein. The power he feels in this moment, the ability to exclude, to diminish, to control who belongs in this space, intoxicates him beyond reason. I've been watching you since you walked in, Tyler continues, his voice gaining momentum like a runaway train. The way you dress, the way you act like you own the place, getting handsy with our equipment. You're not the kind of customer we cater to here. James's phone buzzes with a text response to his earlier call. Sarah Chen is now making her way across the dining room, her face a mask of professional concern barely containing personal panic. She knows exactly who James Williams is, and she knows that Tyler's career, and possibly her own, hangs in the balance of the next few moments. But Tyler, oblivious to the approaching reckoning, pushes forward with the blind confidence of someone who has never faced consequences for his actions. The restaurant has always protected him, always looked the other way, always found reasons to dismiss complaints against him. In his mind, he's untouchable. Sir, please lower your voice, James says calmly. You're disturbing other diners. Don't tell me how to do my job, Tyler explodes. This is my section, my restaurant, and I decide who gets treated how. And right now, I'm deciding that you and your attitude need to go. The entire dining room has gone silent now. Conversations have stopped mid-sentence, forks rest forgotten on plates, and all eyes are focused on the confrontation unfolding in the corner. Some diners look embarrassed, others angry, but all are witnesses to a moment that will define not just Tyler's future, but the character of everyone present. James stands with quiet dignity, his presence somehow filling the space around him despite his calm demeanor. Are you asking us to leave? I'm telling you to leave. Tyler declares, drunk on his perceived power. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone, and I'm exercising that right. You're disruptive, you're confrontational, and frankly, you don't belong here. The words hang in the air like poison gas, their implications clear to everyone present. This isn't about behavior or attitude. It's about race, pure and simple. Tyler has finally said what he's been thinking all along, and there's no taking it back. Sarah Chen reaches their table just as Tyler delivers his final, fatal blow to his own career. Look, I'll be straight with you, Tyler says, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent dining room. This is a classy establishment. We cater to a certain clientele, people with standards, people who understand how to behave in nice places. We don't need troublemakers like you and your kind coming in here acting like hoodlums. The word explodes across the restaurant like a grenade. Hoodlums. The racist dog whistle is so obvious, so blatant, that even the most oblivious diner understands exactly what Tyler means. The mask has finally slipped completely, revealing the ugly truth beneath the professional facade. James remains standing, his dignity intact despite the verbal assault. Amelia's phone continues recording, capturing every word, every gesture, every moment of this career-ending meltdown. And Sarah Chen arrives just in time to hear the word that will destroy everything Tyler has built. Sarah Chen's arrival at the table coincides with the most damning moment of Tyler's tirade, and the color drains from her face as she hears the word hoodlums echo across the suddenly silent dining room. Her hands tremble slightly as she approaches, knowing that she's about to witness either Tyler's destruction or her own, depending on how she handles the next few minutes. "Tyler!" she calls out sharply, her voice cutting through the toxic atmosphere like a knife. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Tyler turns toward her with the confident swagger of someone who believes he has institutional support for his actions. In his mind, Sarah is just another manager who will back him up, smooth things over, and help him maintain the status quo that has protected his behavior for so long. "Sarah, perfect timing," Tyler says with obvious relief. "I'm handling a situation with some difficult customers. They've been disruptive, violating health codes, and frankly, they're not the kind of clientele we want to encourage." Sarah's eyes dart between Tyler's self-satisfied expression and James's calm dignity, and she feels the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a physical force. She's stood by silently for too long, enabled Tyler's behavior through her inaction, and now she faces a choice that will define not just her career, but her character. "Tyler," she says, her voice gaining strength with each word, "do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Tyler's confidence falters slightly at her tone, but he pushes forward with the blind arrogance that has brought him to this precipice. "Look, I know you try to accommodate everyone, but sometimes we have to make tough decisions about maintaining our standards." "Our standards?" Sarah's voice rises incredulously. "Our standards include treating every customer with respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. That's not just policy, Tyler. That's basic human decency." Tyler's face begins to redden as he senses the conversation shifting away from his control. The other diners watch with fascination as the drama unfolds, their meals forgotten in favor of this real-life theater playing out before their eyes. "Sarah, you know as well as I do that certain customers can be challenging," Tyler says, his voice taking on a wheedling quality as he tries to bring her back to his side. "I was just trying to maintain the atmosphere our regular customers expect." Sarah Chen looks at Tyler for a long moment, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. She sees the entitlement, the prejudice, the casual cruelty that has been hiding behind his professional facade. And then she looks at James Williams, recognizing not just his face from company meetings, but the quiet strength he's shown in the face of this humiliation. "Tyler," she says, her voice now carrying across the entire dining room, "you need to stop talking right now." But Tyler, sensing rebellion in the ranks, pushes harder. "Sarah, I don't think you understand the situation here. These people came in looking for trouble, and I was just trying to handle it professionally." "Professionally?" Sarah's voice cracks like a whip. You called him a hoodlum, Tyler, in front of a room full of witnesses. There's nothing professional about that. Tyler's mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping for air as he realizes that Sarah heard his final, damning comment. But instead of backing down, he doubles down with the desperate fury of someone whose worldview is collapsing around him. He was acting like one. Tyler explodes. Coming in here, demanding special treatment, getting handsy with our equipment, lecturing me about customer service. What was I supposed to think? Sarah Chen closes her eyes for a moment, gathering strength for what she knows she has to do. When she opens them, her gaze is steady and determined. Tyler, she says quietly, you need to know who you've been talking to. Tyler's confidence wavers as he notices the suddenly serious tone in Sarah's voice. Around the dining room, conversations have stopped entirely as diners lean forward to catch every word of this unfolding drama. What are you talking about? Tyler asks, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty he's shown throughout this entire confrontation. Sarah turns to James, her face filled with professional respect and personal remorse. Mr. Williams, I am so incredibly sorry for what you've had to endure here today. There is absolutely no excuse for this kind of treatment, and I take full responsibility for not addressing Tyler's behavior patterns before they reached this point. Tyler's face goes white as the name registers. Mr. Williams? He repeats, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nods gravely. Tyler, I'd like you to meet James Williams. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Williams Restaurant Group, which owns 47 restaurants in this region, including this one. The silence that follows is so complete that the only sound in the restaurant is the gentle jazz music still playing through the sound system, now seeming absurdly inappropriate for the gravity of the moment unfolding. Tyler's mouth opens and closes several times before any sound emerges. That's not possible. He's just... look at him. He's your boss, Sarah finishes firmly. He's been conducting an unannounced inspection of our operations, which is standard practice across all Williams Restaurant Group properties. And you've just demonstrated exactly why these inspections are necessary. James finally speaks, his voice calm but carrying an authority that fills the room. Tyler, I've been watching your service style for the past hour. The way you treat different customers, the comments you make, the assumptions you operate under. This isn't an isolated incident, is it? Tyler tries to rally, to find some way to salvage the situation, but his words come out as desperate stammering. Mr. Williams, sir, I had no idea. If I had known who you were. I would never have what? James asks pointedly. Treated me with basic human dignity? Provided standard customer service? Used professional language? Are you saying your behavior would have been different if you'd known my position? The trap is perfectly laid, and Tyler walks right into it. Well, yes, of course I would have. You're the CEO, you deserve... Everyone deserves respectful treatment, James interrupts. That's not dependent on their job title, their clothing, or the color of their skin. It's fundamental to who we are as a company and as human beings. Sarah Chen watches Tyler's face cycle through confusion, fear, and desperate calculation as he tries to find some angle that might save his career. She knows she's reached a point of no return, and surprisingly, it feels liberating rather than terrifying. Mr. Williams, Sarah says, her voice gaining strength. I need to tell you that this isn't the first time Tyler has behaved this way. I've documented several incidents over the past 6 months where customers of color were treated differently, seated in less desirable sections, or subjected to longer wait times and reduced service quality. Tyler spins toward her with betrayal written across his face. Sarah, what are you doing? We're supposed to be a team here. A team doesn't cover up discrimination, Sarah replies firmly. A team doesn't stay silent when customers are being mistreated. I should have spoken up sooner, and I'm ashamed that it took witnessing this level of overt racism to find my courage. James nods approvingly at Sarah's admission. What specific incidents have you documented? Sarah takes a deep breath. knowing that her next words will irrevocably change the trajectory of multiple careers. Last month, Tyler told our kitchen staff to take their time with orders for a black family's table. 2 weeks ago, he seated a Latino couple next to the kitchen door despite having better tables available. And just yesterday, I heard him refer to a group of Asian customers as those people when talking to other servers. Each revelation hits Tyler like a physical blow. His carefully constructed world of plausible deniability crumbles as Sarah methodically dismantles his defense. Around the dining room, customers exchange shocked glances, some pulling out their phones to record this unprecedented moment of accountability. "You're lying," Tyler says desperately. "You can't prove any of that." Sarah reaches into her pocket and pulls out her phone. "Actually, Tyler, I can. I've been keeping voice memos of our staff meetings where you made these comments. I told myself I was gathering evidence to eventually report to HR, but honestly, I was just too scared to act, until now." The final piece of Tyler's world collapses as he realizes the full scope of his exposure. Not only has he been caught red-handed in an act of blatant racism, but there's a paper trail of previous incidents that will make any claim of this being an aberration impossible to sustain. James turns to address the dining room, his voice carrying clearly to every corner. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your meal. What you've witnessed today is completely unacceptable and contrary to every value that Williams Restaurant Group stands for. We will be conducting a full investigation into this incident and implementing immediate changes to ensure it never happens again." The response from the dining room is immediate and overwhelming. Several customers begin applauding, while others nod approvingly. A black couple from a corner table approaches, and the woman speaks up. "Mr. Williams, we've been coming here for months, and we've always felt like we were being treated differently. We just thought it was in our heads." A Latino businessman joins them. "I had a similar experience last week. I was told there were no tables available, but then I watched 3 white families get seated immediately after being told the same thing." Tyler watches in horror as his victims find their voices, encouraged by the safety of speaking truth in the presence of someone with the power to demand accountability. His pattern of behavior, so carefully hidden behind plausible deniability and institutional indifference, stands exposed in the harsh light of public scrutiny. James listens to each testimony with the gravity it deserves, taking notes on his phone and asking clarifying questions. His approach is methodical, professional, and utterly damning for Tyler's future prospects. "Thank you all for your courage in speaking up," James tells the gathered customers. "Your experiences will be part of our formal investigation, and I want you to know that this behavior stops today." Tyler Morrison's legs give out from under him, and he slumps into the nearest chair as the full weight of his situation crashes down upon him like a collapsing building. The confident swagger that has carried him through years of discriminatory behavior has evaporated, leaving behind a man who suddenly understands that his actions have consequences beyond his imagination. James Williams pulls out his phone with the deliberate precision of someone who has dealt with crisis management throughout his career. His first call goes to his human resources director, and his voice carries clearly across the dining room as he speaks with calm authority. "Janet, this is James. I need an emergency investigation team at Riverside Bistro immediately. We have a situation involving systematic discrimination against customers of color, and I need a full audit of our hiring practices, training protocols, and incident reporting systems." "Yes, I'm serious. And Janet? Bring the legal team." Tyler tries to interrupt, his voice cracking with desperation. "Mr. Williams, please, if we could just talk about this privately." "I'm sure we can work something out. I've been a good employee. My performance reviews have always been—" James holds up a hand for silence, and Tyler's protests die in his throat. The gesture is simple but carries such natural authority that everyone in the restaurant seems to hold their breath. "Tyler," James says quietly, "your employment with Williams Restaurant Group is terminated, effective immediately. You will be escorted from the premises, and your final paycheck will be processed according to company policy." Any personal items in your locker will be inventoried and returned to you. The words land like hammer blows, each one sealing Tyler's fate with finality that admits no appeal. But James isn't finished. Furthermore, he continues, this incident will be reported to the relevant civil rights authorities, and a full investigation will be conducted. If evidence supports a pattern of discriminatory behavior, we will cooperate fully with any legal proceedings that may follow. Tyler's face cycles through stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, and finally a desperate kind of acceptance as he realizes the magnitude of his fall from grace. Mr. Williams, sir, please, I have a mortgage, car payments, student loans. I can't afford to lose this job. Maybe some additional training, a written warning. Sarah Chen steps forward, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she's about to do. Mr. Williams, I need to show you something. She pulls out her phone and opens her voice memo app, scrolling through weeks of recorded conversations. I've been documenting Tyler's comments during staff meetings. I told myself I was gathering evidence to eventually report, but honestly, I was too scared to rock the boat. I can't live with that cowardice anymore. James nods approvingly. Play them. The first recording fills the quiet restaurant with Tyler's voice from 2 weeks earlier. I swear, these people don't understand fine dining. They come in here expecting McDonald's service and complain when we try to maintain standards. Maybe they'd be more comfortable at Applebee's. Tyler's current voice overlaps with his recorded past self as he desperately tries to provide context. That was taken out of context. I was talking about specific behavioral issues, not race. Sarah skips to another recording. The thing is, you have to manage these situations carefully. You can't be obvious about it, but you can definitely guide certain types of customers toward appropriate seating areas. It's about maintaining the atmosphere our real customers expect. The evidence is damning in its casual cruelty, revealing a mindset that has turned discrimination into an art form. Each recording peels back another layer of Tyler's carefully constructed facade, exposing the systematic nature of his prejudice. A well-dressed black woman from across the dining room approaches their table, her voice trembling with emotion. Excuse me, Mr. Williams. I'm Dr. Patricia Johnson, and I've been a customer here for over a year. I want you to know that your employee's behavior explains so much about my experiences here. James turns his full attention to her, recognizing the courage it takes to speak up in this moment. Please, tell me what happened. Dr. Johnson's voice grows stronger as she finds her footing. Every time I've dined here, I've been seated in less desirable locations despite making reservations. My service has been slower, less attentive. I'm a surgeon at Metropolitan General, and I often entertain colleagues here, but I've started to notice how differently we're treated compared to white diners. Tyler attempts one final desperate defense. Dr. Johnson, if you had just told me your profession, your status in the community. My status shouldn't matter, she interrupts firmly. Every customer deserves the same level of respect and service, regardless of their job, their appearance, or their race. The fact that you think my worth as a customer depends on my professional credentials proves exactly what kind of person you are. James's phone rings, and he answers immediately. Yes, Janet, I'm still at Riverside Bistro. Good. Bring the full team. We're going to need comprehensive interviews with all staff members, a review of security footage from the past 6 months, and a complete audit of our complaint handling procedures. He hangs up and addresses the growing group of customers who have gathered around their table. I want everyone here to know that what you've witnessed today is not who we are as a company. We've clearly failed in our oversight responsibilities, and we're going to implement immediate changes to prevent this from ever happening again. A Hispanic gentleman raises his hand. Mr. Williams, I'm Carlos Martinez, and I run a catering business in town. I've referred several clients to this restaurant over the years, but I've always felt uncomfortable about the way my family and I were treated when we dined here ourselves. Knowing what I know now, I feel complicit in sending people into an environment where they might face discrimination. James nods gravely. Mr. Martinez, your concerns are valid, and I appreciate your honesty. We're going to be implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all staff, creating anonymous reporting systems for both employees and customers, and establishing regular oversight protocols to ensure incidents like this are caught and addressed immediately. Tyler makes one last desperate plea as he sees his future disappearing entirely. Mr. Williams, I've worked in this industry for 8 years. This will destroy my career. Maybe we could handle this internally, some kind of probation period with sensitivity training. James's response is firm and final. Tyler, you've had 8 years to learn basic human decency, and you've chosen not to. This industry doesn't need people who see customers as worthy or unworthy based on their race. Your career in hospitality is over, at least in any establishment that cares about treating people with dignity. Sarah Chen speaks up again, her voice carrying new authority. Mr. Williams, there's something else. Tyler isn't the only staff member with these attitudes. There are at least 2 other servers and 1 kitchen manager who have made similar comments. This is bigger than just 1 employee. James's expression hardens as he realizes the scope of the problem. Sarah, I want you to compile a complete list of everyone involved, along with any evidence you have. We're going to clean house completely. The Human Resources team arrives with legal representation, and James coordinates with them to begin immediate interviews with all staff members. Security footage is pulled, employee records are reviewed, and a comprehensive investigation begins that will ultimately result in the termination of 4 employees. And a complete overhaul of the restaurant's hiring and training procedures. Tyler Morrison gathers his personal belongings under the watchful eye of security personnel, his face a mask of disbelief and defeat. As he walks toward the exit, Dr. Johnson speaks one final time. Tyler, she says quietly, I hope you use this experience to examine your beliefs and become a better person. But know that your actions have caused real harm to real people, and the consequences you're facing are entirely of your own making. Tyler pauses at the door, perhaps considering whether to respond, but ultimately exits in silence. His career in the hospitality industry is over, his reputation destroyed, and his actions exposed to public scrutiny that will follow him far beyond this single incident. James Williams watches him go, feeling no satisfaction in the destruction of another person's livelihood, but knowing that accountability is the only path toward real change. The easy thing would have been to handle this quietly, to sweep it under the rug and hope it doesn't happen again. But real leadership requires the courage to confront uncomfortable truths and implement difficult solutions. The dining room at Riverside Bistro gradually returns to a semblance of normalcy as the immediate crisis passes. But the atmosphere has fundamentally changed. Conversations that resume carry a different quality, more thoughtful, more conscious of the weight of what everyone has witnessed. James Williams remains at his corner table with Amelia, but their presence now serves as a focal point for reflection rather than conflict. Sarah Chen approaches their table with a mixture of relief and apprehension written across her features. Her hands still tremble slightly from the adrenaline of finally speaking truth to power, but her posture carries new strength born from moral courage. Mr. Williams, she begins, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's just experienced. I need to apologize not just for Tyler's behavior, but for my own complicity in allowing it to continue. I knew what was happening, and I chose silence over action. That makes me partially responsible for every customer who was mistreated during my watch. James studies her with the calm assessment of someone who has spent decades evaluating character under pressure. Sarah, recognition of past failures is the first step toward future improvement. The question now is what you plan to do with this experience moving forward. I want to be part of the solution, Sarah responds immediately. I want to help implement the changes needed to ensure this never happens again. I want to create an environment where speaking up about injustice is rewarded rather than punished, where every customer truly receives equal treatment regardless of their background. Amelia, who has been quietly observing the entire ordeal, speaks up with the clarity that sometimes comes from youth. Uncle James, I've been thinking about what just happened. Tyler didn't just wake up this morning and decide to be racist. This has been building for years, right? So how many other people are out there, in other restaurants, other businesses, treating people badly because they think they can get away with it? James places a gentle hand on his niece's shoulder, proud of her insight and saddened by the harsh lesson she's had to learn. That's exactly right, sweetheart. What we witnessed today wasn't an aberration. It was a symptom of a much larger problem. Tyler felt comfortable behaving this way because he believed the system would protect him, that his actions would be overlooked or justified. Dr. Patricia Johnson, who has remained nearby during the aftermath, joins their conversation with the measured tone of someone accustomed to dealing with life-and-death situations. Mr. Williams, if I may, I think what happened here today represents something larger than just poor customer service. This is about human dignity, about the right of every person to move through the world without having their worth questioned based on their appearance. James nods thoughtfully. You're absolutely right, Dr. Johnson. In my 45 years on this earth, I've learned that respect isn't something that should have to be earned through credentials or status. It should be the default setting for how we treat every human being we encounter. The conversation draws other customers who have been affected by similar experiences, creating an impromptu support group in the middle of the restaurant. Carlos Martinez shares stories of subtle discrimination he's faced in other establishments, while an elderly black couple recounts decades of navigating spaces where they were barely tolerated rather than welcomed. The thing that strikes me, says James, addressing the gathered group, is how much energy we waste on systems that divide us rather than unite us. Tyler spent enormous effort trying to maintain artificial hierarchies based on race and class. Imagine if that same energy had been directed toward creating genuine hospitality for everyone. Sarah Chen listens intently, understanding that she's receiving a masterclass in leadership and moral courage. Mr. Williams, how do we prevent this from happening again? Not just here, but everywhere. James considers the question carefully before responding. It starts with acknowledging that good intentions aren't enough. We need systems, training, accountability measures, and most importantly, the courage to speak up when we see injustice happening. Silence in the face of discrimination is complicity, whether we intend it that way or not. Amelia holds up her phone, which still contains the video recording of Tyler's meltdown. Should I post this online? I mean, people should see what happened, right? James takes a moment to consider the implications of his answer, knowing that his response will shape how his niece thinks about justice and public accountability for years to come. That's a complicated question, sweetheart. Tyler's actions deserve consequences, and transparency can be a powerful tool for change. But we also have to consider whether public shaming serves justice or just satisfies our desire for revenge. Dr. Johnson offers her perspective as someone who has navigated professional environments where discretion often matters. I think there's value in documenting these incidents, if only to create a record that can't be disputed later. Too often, victims of discrimination are gaslighted into believing their experiences weren't real or weren't that serious. The Human Resources team finishes their preliminary interviews and approaches James with their initial findings. The scope of the problem extends beyond Tyler to include systemic issues with hiring practices, training protocols, and complaint handling procedures that have allowed discriminatory behavior to flourish unchecked. Mr. Williams, the HR director reports, we're looking at a complete overhaul of operations here. This isn't just about one bad employee. It's about institutional failures that created an environment where discrimination was tolerated or ignored. James accepts the report with the gravity it deserves, understanding that real change will require sustained effort and significant resources. Good. I want recommendations for comprehensive reforms within 72 hours. And I want similar audits conducted at all Williams Restaurant Group properties within the next 60 days. As the afternoon wears on and the restaurant slowly empties, James finds himself in conversation with staff members who remained after Tyler's dismissal. Many express relief that someone finally spoke up about problems they had witnessed but felt powerless to address. A young server named Michael approaches hesitantly. Mr. Williams, I want you to know that not all of us agreed with how Tyler treated customers, but honestly, he had seniority, and management seemed to support his approach. Speaking up felt risky. James understands the dynamics that create such environments. Michael, what would have made it easier for you to report these problems? Anonymous reporting systems, maybe? And knowing that complaints would actually be investigated rather than buried. Tyler always said that complaints about him never went anywhere because management knew he brought in tips from the right customers. The conversation reveals layers of institutional dysfunction that go far beyond individual prejudice. Tyler's behavior was enabled by systems that prioritized certain types of revenue over basic human dignity, creating perverse incentives that rewarded discrimination. As the sun begins to set through the restaurant's windows, casting long shadows across the now quiet dining room, James reflects on the broader implications of the day's events. Change at one restaurant is meaningful, but it's ultimately symbolic, unless it connects to larger transformations in how society addresses systemic discrimination. You know, he tells the small group still gathered around their table, what happened here today will only matter if we all commit to carrying these lessons into our daily lives. Every time we choose to speak up rather than stay silent, every time we demand better from the institutions we support, we make progress toward a more just world. Sarah Chen, now wearing the temporary manager badge that reflects her promotion following the day's upheaval, makes a final observation. Mr. Williams, I think what I learned today is that moral courage isn't a big dramatic moment. It's all the small choices we make when we think nobody important is watching. James smiles at her insight, recognizing the wisdom that often emerges from crisis. Exactly right, Sarah. Character isn't what we do when we know we're being evaluated. It's what we do when we think nobody with power will ever find out. Amelia joins him at the window, her young mind still processing the complexities of what she's witnessed. Uncle James, I keep thinking about all the customers who experienced what we experienced today but didn't have someone with your position to speak up for them. How many people just accepted poor treatment because they felt powerless to change it? Sarah Chen, overhearing their conversation as she reviews the day's incident reports, joins them with her own perspective shaped by years of complicity and today's moral awakening. I think the first step is recognizing that there's no such thing as an innocent bystander. If you see discrimination happening and you stay silent, you're part of the problem, even if you personally disagree with what's occurring. James nods approvingly. That's right, Sarah. But we also have to acknowledge that speaking up often requires courage, and courage is easier when you have support systems. People need to know that doing the right thing won't destroy their lives or their careers. The conversation draws in Michael and other staff members who have remained after their shifts to participate in the ongoing discussions about workplace culture and personal responsibility. Their perspectives reveal the complex dynamics that either enable or prevent ethical behavior in organizational settings. Dr. Patricia Johnson, who has stayed to provide her contact information for the formal investigation, offers her insights as someone who has navigated professional environments where speaking up about injustice can have career implications. The challenge is creating cultures where reporting discrimination is seen as professional responsibility rather than personal betrayal. Too often, the people who speak up are labeled as troublemakers rather than heroes. James understands that sustainable change requires more than individual acts of courage. It requires institutional reforms that protect and reward people who take risks to defend others. We're going to implement some specific changes across all Williams Restaurant Group properties. Anonymous reporting systems, regular bias training, customer feedback protocols that specifically address discrimination, and most importantly, consequences for managers who ignore or enable discriminatory behavior. Amelia, still recording parts of the conversation on her phone, asks about the broader implications. But Uncle James, this is just one company. What about all the other places where this kind of thing happens? How do we create change beyond just our restaurants? That's where each of you comes in, he says, addressing the group but focusing on Amelia. Every person who witnessed what happened today has a choice. You can treat this as entertainment, something interesting that happened to someone else, or you can treat it as a call to action in your own lives. He turns to face the group directly, his voice taking on the authority of someone who has spent decades building businesses and managing people. I want you to think about the spaces you occupy every day. Your schools, your workplaces, your social organizations, the businesses you patronize. How many times have you witnessed or experienced discrimination but stayed silent because it seemed easier or safer? The question hangs in the air, challenging each person to examine their own complicity in systems that perpetuate injustice. Sarah Chen speaks first, her voice carrying the weight of recent moral reckoning. "I'm going to start speaking up," she says simply. "Not just here at work, but everywhere. When I hear racist comments from friends or family, when I see businesses treating customers unfairly, when I witness any form of discrimination. Today taught me that silence isn't neutrality. It's choosing the side of the oppressor." Dr. Johnson nods in agreement. "As someone with professional standing in this community, I have a responsibility to use my voice and my platform to address these issues. I'm going to be writing about today's experience in the medical journal I edit, focusing on how discrimination affects mental and physical health in ways that most people don't consider." Carlos Martinez, who has been listening thoughtfully, adds his own commitment. "I'm going to be more intentional about which businesses I support and recommend to others. When restaurants or other establishments demonstrate inclusive practices, I'll make sure my community knows about it, and when they don't, I'll speak up about that too." Michael and the other restaurant staff commit to creating peer accountability systems that make it harder for discriminatory behavior to flourish in workplace environments. "We're going to establish protocols for supporting each other when someone needs to report problematic behavior," Michael explains. "No one should have to choose between their job security and their moral obligations." James recognizes the power of these individual commitments while understanding that lasting change requires broader social movements. "Everything you've said is crucial, but I want to challenge you to think even bigger. What would happen if everyone who witnessed discrimination today committed to sharing their experience with 10 other people? And what if those people each committed to being more vigilant about addressing injustice in their own spheres of influence?" Amelia's eyes light up with understanding. "It's like that saying about throwing a pebble in a pond. The ripples keep spreading outward until they reach shores you never imagined." "Exactly," James confirms. "Social change happens when enough people decide they're not going to tolerate injustice anymore, even when it's not directly affecting them." Tyler felt comfortable behaving the way he did because he believed most people would either support him or stay silent. We need to create environments where people like Tyler know their behavior will be immediately challenged and reported. Sarah Chen, now fully embracing her role as someone with the power to influence workplace culture, makes a specific commitment. "I'm going to work with our HR team to develop training materials that other restaurants can use. If we can share what we learn from reforming our practices, maybe we can help other businesses avoid the problems we've had to confront." The conversation continues as the group discusses practical strategies for addressing discrimination in various contexts. They talk about bystander intervention techniques, the importance of documenting incidents, resources for supporting victims of discrimination, and ways to hold institutions accountable for enabling or ignoring problematic behavior. As the evening deepens and the restaurant closes around them, James makes a final observation that ties together all the threads of their discussion. What happened here today was terrible, but it was also necessary. Sometimes injustice has to be exposed dramatically before people find the motivation to address it systematically. The question is whether we'll use this moment as a catalyst for real change or just a temporary disruption that we eventually forget about. James Williams embraces his niece, proud of her insight and confident that she will carry the lessons of this day into a lifetime of standing up for justice. Around them, Sarah Chen, Dr. Johnson, Carlos Martinez, Michael, and others prepare to return to their daily lives, but each carries with them a renewed commitment to speaking truth to power and defending human dignity wherever they encounter threats to it. The ripples from this single afternoon will spread far beyond Riverside Bistro. creating waves of change that touch countless lives in ways both seen and unseen. That is how justice advances, not through grand gestures or perfect people, but through ordinary individuals who decide that staying silent is no longer an option.